Some prospect news for today's episode. We'll look at Ivan Ryabkin in the USHL, Beckett Sennecke is popping off in the OHL as well, and Lane Hutson's generational rookie season. We'll look at that on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospect.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hattie Kalikash, QMJHL Scout and Crossover Scout for Elite Prospects, with Sebastian High, USHL and Crossover Scout for Elite Prospects. And on today's show, we'll be breaking down some prospects news in general. Ivan Ryabkin made his way over to Muskegon in the USHL. We'll talk about him and his line mates and how things are going on that side. We'll also talk about Beckett Sennecke and Will Horcoff in the second segment. Sennecke's continuing his insane a draft plus one season over in the OHL, and Will Horcoff has been producing well since he moved to Michigan from the NTDP. And then finally, in the final segment, we have the big story. Lane Hutson continues to exceed expectations. He's on pace for 65 points. We'll talk about his generational rookie season and how insane what he's been doing this season is. But before we get into any of that, make sure to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think of the episode. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rating and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's get started right away here with Ivan Ryabkin in the USHL. He's moved over to Muskegon. This move has been in the works on and off for a while. And then during the World Juniors, we started hearing rumblings. The scouts were saying that his agent was telling them to expect Ryabkin with Muskegon before the new year. And surprisingly, after, the whole boy cried wolf situation earlier that same year, it actually happened. So Ivan Ryabkin is now a Muskegon Lumberjack. He's playing over the USHL. Talk me through his games so far in Muskegon and kind of how he's been performing so far. And has anything really changed from what we've seen in Russia so far?
Statistically, yes. In practice, no.
Yeah.
On paper, definitely. I mean, he's tripled his goal tally from the entirety of his season in Russia so far this season. Yep. In 25 games there, split between the KHL, VHL, and MHL, mostly in the MHL. He only scored a single goal. He added to that another 13 assists, so he had 14 points in those 25 games. And so far with Muskegon, he's played 2 games, and he has 3 goals and no assists. So looks great on paper. But those 2 games came against the U17 NTDP, which is by far the weakest competition that you're going to find in the USHL. And those goals came off of some really good offensive rotations with Ryabkin. That was one thing that really has improved so far already in his game on North American ice. He's a lot more active in his off-puck movement in the offensive zone. He's constantly rotating, switching positions with his teammates, including on the defensive side. He loves to cycle up along the right-hand boards and then and up towards the blue line, cut inside, and then be a playmaking threat from that right shot defense position as a left shooter. So he's been doing some interesting things in terms of that. However, the intensity, the determination, the dog in him is still at about the 0 that it was for most of the season. There's a real lack of implication in his play. He was really cherry picking in the defensive zone for most of the viewings I got there. And I don't use that term lightly. I don't love the use of the term cherry picking because I think it often is used to just kind of like dump on especially European players, and Ryabkin is one of those. That said, he was just hanging out at the blue line in the defensive zone during lengthy cycle sequences, and he had his wingers drop down into those center roles deep in the defensive zone, including a 16-year-old winger, one of his line mates, Tynan Lawrence, who we'll talk about a little bit later in the segment here, who was fantastic in those games and outshone Ryabkin. But overall, I would say with Ryabkin, you still have flashes of really smart, really good vision and a good understanding of defensive structures and how to use off-puck movement to fool them and to create space. However, you're still getting the same kind of lack of intensity, as well as the limitations and dynamism that come with that. There's a lack of intensity in his feet, no matter whether he has the puck on his stick or not, and that makes him a bit of a static attacker as well. So definitely still some question marks with Ryabkin. He doesn't look to me like a top 15, top 20 caliber prospect, but definitely is still a guy that has some interesting tools and some interesting habits. But I'm curious to hear from you, because you've watched a decent amount of Ryabkin on the Russian side, not yet on the North American side here, and stylistically he's still playing very much the same game that he was playing all season long. But what is for you at the core of what is, I guess, the issue with Ryabkin in his current projection, and what could he actually work on to improve the outlook of his career here?
Yeah, I think what we talked about in the last episode, the Ringside Roundup, where we talked about Blake Montgomery, rush patterns, changes of space, give and goes, acceleration into space. That's exactly what's missing in Ryabkin's game so far offensively. It's one thing to be a bit of a cherry picker defensively and not really kind of get involved in your own zone, which is strange because what I really liked last year in my viewings in his draft -1 from Ivan Ryabkin was his involvement, was his energy. It's kind of just disappeared. It's less worrying because it's there, he's able to. It's just not doing it for some reason, whether it's attitude issues or just not being comfortable with his environment, still getting used to what it's like to play USHL hockey, or maybe even underestimating USHL hockey. Not sure what's going on that side, but overall, I think that Ryabkin's just very much, I think the offensive side, the offensive issues of lacking those transition details, lacking that ability to modulate his pace to create advantages. I think that's exactly the issue we're seeing from him. That I saw from him last year, that I've seen from him in Russia this year, and what you're discussing now with what he's gone through so far in the USHL. He's a very static attacker, doesn't really move his feet through receptions, doesn't really attack the middle off the blue line with any particular interest or dynamism or deception. It's pretty linear in terms of the way that he approaches his attacks. I think it's something that's definitely concerning there. But from what I've heard, one of his teammates over in Muskegon, Tynan Lawrence, and also Vaclav Nestrasil, I think both of them have been having decent seasons, and Nestrasil could be a top 64 prospect in the 2025 NHL draft, right?
Easily, very, very easily. He's a player that I stumbled upon a little bit later here in the scouting season, but now that I've been catching some isolated viewings of him, I'm really, really impressed. He's a 6'5", 190-pound right shot right winger, and he brings a nice combination of hard and soft skill. He's obviously really big, and he knows how to use that. He leverages his long reach to be a really effective pickpocket in the neutral zone, and uses those tools as well on the defensive side of the puck. But on puck, so much pace, really good vision, making very, very quick reads, and executing really impressive, like high-end level passes on the tape with distinct and consistent accuracy. So a player that I think has like some really specialist qualities in terms of that frame, the physical tools combined with that playmaking, especially down low in the offensive zone, but just a puck possession like dog. Really, really good, and a player that I think outshone Ryabkin in both of those viewings against the U17 NTDP. So a guy that I think is more than worth the conversation in that second round range. And if he's able to build off of what he's been doing so far this season with this new influx of talent in Muskegon, with, of course, Ivan Ryabkin, I think this is a guy that could even contend for a late first round ranking by year's end. Some of his qualities remind me a little bit stylistically of Mietinen last season in Everett with in the WHL. Has some of the big frame, the down low playmaking, the combination of soft and hard skill. I think that the skills has a bit more pop even with Nestrasil, a lot to like with this player. But the other one, player that maybe a lot of fans here haven't heard of yet because he's a D-1 talent, is Tynan Lawrence. He's a 16-year-old centerman. He can play the wing as well. But he's been taking a lot of draws in Muskegon this year, especially before Ryabkin arrived. And he often plays shifts at center on the penalty kill at 4-on-4, playing the center role in those situations. And he was a player that compensated for Ivan Ryabkin's cherry picking in those games by being the one adopting the center responsibilities in the defensive zone to kind of allow Ryabkin to do his thing at the blue line. And he's a player with a lot of dynamism, a lot of pace, and really, really high-end skating ability. So he brings that combination of intelligence, defensive solidity, as well as some really good puck skills offensively, really dynamic. He loves doing like 90-degree cuts inside as soon as he crosses the offensive blue line, just buys himself a bunch of time and space in the high slot, and he's quite dangerous in that area, which has gotten him 23 points in 30 games this season as a 16-year-old. And this is a player who might consider a swap to the QMJHL next season for his draft campaign, as I believe he's a Shawinigan I think he's like in their system, but it may have been a different team. I have to double check that again, but I know he is a commit, and there's been many discussions around whether or not he's going to go the CHL route now that AA has changed its policies there. So a lot of interesting talents here with the Muskegon Lumberjacks, a lot of forwards to keep an eye on this season. So if you have access to watching the USHL, I'd recommend watching Muskegon. It's a fun team, but I think that wraps up this first segment for us, Hattie.
Yeah, before we get into that though, just in a sentence, is Ivan Ryabkin still a first-round selection?
It's a difficult one in one sentence. Wow. Not personally for me at this moment. There are other USHL talents that I would take ahead of him, Jack Murtagh being the clear one. I think that he's a really high-end second-round caliber player. I feel quite similarly almost as how I did with Edward Schala back in his draft year, where the intelligence, the tools, it has been there in the past, but you're just not seeing it this season. And hey, Edward Schala is rebounding in his career this year, so maybe that is also a lesson to learn for perhaps be a little bit more cautious with dropping players down rankings that drastically. But if right now I have to answer, having watched the games I just watched of Ivan Ryabkin, he'd be more in that 33 to 35 range.
Got it. Perfect. So that's our first segment done. We'll get into our second segment here where we talk about Beckett Sennecke and Will Horcoff, who have been popping off recently. Just a quick word from our sponsors here first.
From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game interesting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has got you covered. Whether you want to make those swings on the NFL playoffs or perhaps on European football with the Champions League or tennis or golf, or if you're listening to this podcast, maybe hockey is your sport of choice. Whatever it may be, FanDuel has something to offer every kind of sports fan. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Alrighty, so moving on to our second segment here, we have to talk about Beckett Sennecke's season so far with the Oshawa Generals in the OHL. He's once again just popping off offensively, continuing on the great progression they showed in the second half of last season, and has hit the ground running so far. It seems like he took that World Junior snub to heart and has been on a mission to prove everyone wrong about his potential and his ability to impact the game. 28 goals, 35 assists for 63 points in 35 games for the Oshawa Generals so far this season. Do you see anything having changed so far that led to this basic doubling of production? I mean, we're at the halfway point of the season. He's already 5 points shy of last year's total, right?
Hunger, honestly, I think it's hunger with Beckett Sennecke. The tools have always been there with this player, and he was fantastic earlier on this season, even when the production wasn't quite at the level it's at right now. But especially after that training camp Canada snub for the World Junior Championships, he just absolutely ramped up his play with like 6.5 point performances, and he's been so consistent. Since then, he's only gone 2 games without scoring a single point. Every other game, he's scored at least one, and most of those he scored at least two. So he's been really, really consistent here for the Oshawa Generals, and he's making an impact not only on the score sheet. I mean, we know that Beckett Sennecke can score goals with that wicked shot, get to dangerous scoring positions with his handling, and execute from those with high-end playmaking ability. But the physical ability, the off-puck game, the sense of timing on his off-puck routes into space in the offensive zone, and his forechecking game have all taken another step, and they were already all quite decent strengths in this game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, he's at 33 points in his last 13 games. Like, he is, isn't that ridiculous? Like, that is just next level production. He had a 14-point run in 3 games at the start of December and just continuously put up multi-point games. He had a couple games where he didn't score a single point, but outside of those 2 games, since that 14-point run, in 3 games, he has, if you exclude those 2 games, he has multi-point games in every other game. 2 points, 2 points, 2 points, 2 points, 4 points, 3 points, 2 points, and 2 points. Absolutely absurd production from Sennecke so far. It's very rare to see a prospect really, again, just hit another new level. I think a lot of it has to do with shooting habits. Last year was very much a playmaker. He still scored 27 goals, but he's at 28 goals already so far through 35 games. And, if you look at the overall playmaking leanings from him last year, he was very much a deke to the slot, create something astounding with your hands, and then pass and then make the final pass for the goal. This season, he's turning into a very, very effective power play shooter on top of still doing that high-end playmaking deception, that high-end handling skill that we've seen already from him so far that led him to be a 3rd overall pick to the Anaheim Ducks. I still think at 3rd overall, it was definitely a need pick from Anaheim. They really needed a right shot shooter, and he was the best one available. If they didn't pick him there, it was probably going to slip into the 6 to 10 range, something like that. Depending on who got picked ahead of him, but still, it's not a huge drop off. We're talking about a 6'4", 195-pound, incredibly skilled winger who also has started to develop a shooting mindset, and that shooting mindset doesn't really come at the expense of playmaking, which is really important for me because a lot of the time with these prospects who are high-end playmakers who decide to become shooters and develop that side of their game, they don't understand the toggle yet of like, okay, this is a moment where I need to shoot. This is a moment where I need to pass. It's like, oh, I've been passing for so long. Now it's time to shoot everything, right? That's not Sennecke's game. Like, he's very, very good at choosing his spots, choosing when to shoot, choosing when to pass. I think that's been the big progression in this game so far this year. And he's still a very, very exciting prospect. And Anaheim really misses with their picks like these. I remember Mason McTavish, his selection raising a couple eyebrows. They've been correct with him so far. He's been a phenomenal prospect for them. Let's trust the Ducks. I think they know what they're doing scouting wise. The last guy we want to talk about, Will Horcoff, in this second segment. He's been very good since moving to Michigan from the NTDP, which kind of is putting a highlight on how struggling this NTDP squad is, right?
It really does. I mean, his point per game mark, I mean, it's very small sample here, 4 games so far in the NCAA, but it's basically doubled compared to the NTDP production. He has a goal and 4 points in 4 games. He's at a point a game there with the University of Michigan, and he only had 8 points in 19 games with the NTDP. And this despite being a really intelligent, high-end playmaker with flashes of handling ability and a 6'4", 181-pound frame. He's a big guy, but he reads the game really well. That's really the basis of what he does so well on the ice. It's just reading the game faster than his opposition. And when you combine quick reads with big frame and good playmaking instincts and pretty good playmaking execution as well, there's still room to grow there, but clearly he's already on his way to doing that here in Michigan with those 3 assists in 3 games, playing bottom 6 minutes. It's been a great transition for the player. He started off on the 4th line, and he's already playing on the 3rd line now in Michigan. He got bumped up immediately after that first game against Ohio State, where he scored a goal and an assist in his college debut. And I think it's a good thing for the player to be outside of that NTDP environment. I think it's quite clear that this year's NTDP on the ice is an absolute shambles. Nothing to say about the locker room there. I have no idea what's going on in there, but on the ice, it's been really difficult to watch, and a lot of players struggling, even though they have so many great individual qualities. But that team has always just looked like a bunch of individuals trying to play together rather than a collective with a real cohesive idea of how to play together. So taking him out of that situation and into a far more structured environment here with the University of Michigan has been great for his development. And I think that he's only going to raise his draft stock as a result, because the tools are great. The reads are really good. The frame is obviously an NHL projectable one. I think teams are going to be all over this player in the second round at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're talking about the son of a former almost point-to-game player at some stages of his season in the NHL, Sean Horcoff of the Edmonton Oilers. Great career from his father as well. He has a frame, he has a bloodline, he has really good reads. How far high are you going to push for him at our next meeting here at Elite Prospects?
I still think he's a mid-second caliber for me at the moment, but there's room to move up even into the late first for me. Like, his range goes anywhere from the late first to the late second. I think that there's quite a lot of variability with where he could end up on our final rankings at the end of the year. But the tools are so good and the vision is so good. This is definitely a guy I think should be in that top 50 conversation in draft ranking discussions.
Absolutely. That's our second segment done. We'll get into our third segment where we talk about Lane Hutson. What a season this kid has been having. We'll talk about his chase of historical numbers, not just franchise-wise, but league-wide as well, in terms of historical production for a rookie player, not just a defenseman. We'll get into that in a second. Just before, a quick word from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. Alrighty, so our final segment is up, and we need to talk about Lane Hutson. What a phenomenal season this kid has been having. He's just been absolutely on fire for the Montreal Canadiens. As of recording this, just finished a 3-assist night against the Seattle Kraken, in which he played once again above 20 minutes. Last time he played below 20 minutes was December 28th against the Florida Panthers, and he played 19:07 in that game. He's playing high-end minutes for the Montreal Canadiens and doing so much with them. That's the most impressive thing with Lane Hutson. He looks 0% out of place in the NHL this year as a 20-year-old, 5'10" rookie defenseman. And so far, with 35 points in 43 games, he's currently right on the heels of the Montreal Canadiens franchise record for the most points from a rookie, which is 71 in a season. Do you think there's a chance that Lane Hutson exceeds that record this season?
Definitely a chance. I think it's entirely within the realm of possibility with the deployment that Lane Hutson has been getting this season, and just the insane output in terms of leading all defensemen in the league in terms of passes to the slot so far this year, including the likes of Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes, as you told me before the episode, which... Yep. Of course. It's Lane Hutson. Of course he does.
If you watch him, that's no surprise. Like,
not at all. He attempts at least 10 of those a game. Like, he's constantly looking to the dangerous areas. But in regards of like those more historical stats in terms of Montreal all-time like best rookie season in terms of production, I think he could get there. He's on pace for 66 points this season at the moment. So I think another 5 on top of that, considering that he's only been ramping up that production over the past couple months. I think it's entirely possible. But if you even look league-wide, in terms of U22 defensemen in the NHL since 1990. We're not going to look beyond that, because then you get into a bunch of years where you just had random 19-year-old defensemen scoring over a point a game. And of course, Bobby Orr just destroying every single record book with these filters. But if we look at 1990 since, in terms of the highest scoring seasons for a U22 defenseman, it's not even just rookie, not even just Lane Hutson's age. I mean, Lane Hutson is 20 years old. We're extending that a little bit to 22 years here. Only 2 defensemen have scored 65 points or more, and only 1 defenseman has scored more than what Lane Hutson is on track for at the moment, which is 66 points. And that is Erik Karlsson in 2011-2012 for the Ottawa Senators, where he scored 19 goals and 78 points in 81 games. The other player in that mix was Roman Hamrlik, who in 1995-1996 scored 65 points in 82 games for a Tampa Bay Lightning team on its road to a first-round exit that year. This is not something that happens often for defensemen this young to be scoring at this rate. Not even Cale Makar or Quinn Hughes are in this range. I mean, Quinn Hughes is down at 9th with 53 points in 68 games as his best U22 season. Lane Hutson is more than on pace to surpass that at the moment. So a lot to love here with Lane Hutson. But if we're zooming away from the stats a little bit and on to the actual ice, What is Lane Hutson doing at the moment that is just so separating at the NHL level?
I think the main thing is just how comfortable he is on puck and how much more comfortable he's getting absorbing pressure, not just to deke through them or do his usual shake and bake head fakes down the boards, but just absorbing pressure to just put defenses to sleep. I think the assist he made on Kirby Dach's goal in the Utah game was a perfect example of that. Most rookie defensemen, even a lot of seasoned NHL veterans, they have the puck for that long, they start panicking. Oh God, what do I do? What do I do now? Where do I need to throw the puck in order to get it as far away from me as possible? Lane Hutson just cut across the middle from right to left, drew 3-4 pairs of eyes to him and a couple of pairs of skates his way before dishing a great cross-ice pass, a simple play to Kirby Dach, but it was so effective because Hutson originated on the right side, went all the way to the left side to the blue line, to the top of the circles, and then absorbed all those eyes, all that attention, all that pressure. And that's the only reason why Kirby Dach was able to just walk in and score. The defense fell asleep because they were puck watching, but they wouldn't be puck watching if Lane Hutson hadn't used that rush pattern to delay, to allow play to catch up. I think the easy play on that play would have been to just dump the puck in. Right? Like, I think that would have been an easy opt-out for a prospect who wouldn't have the amount of composure on puck that Hutson does. But I think playing over 20 minutes a night, consistently, every single night, has allowed Hutson to understand, I can keep the puck. I can delay. I can wait for teammates to catch it. Like, these are things you understand with reps at the NHL level. How much space you have, how much time you have, and how to create that time and space, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, like, on that sequence, especially if you want a picture perfect example of what a gravitational pull looks like on the ice, it is that play. Lane Hutson shimmying around, getting all those eyes, as you mentioned, and those pairs of skates all drifting towards him, leaving a chasm of space on the right-hand side for Kirby Dach. So, and this is just one of how many times that we've seen this kind of play from Lane Hutson this season. Typically not on like that, like a full offensive zone scale like that play was, but often in tight as well, making those small little pulls out of position, creating little pockets of space for his teammates. He's just been fantastic. And also that assist on the Cole Caulfield goal, puck on the tape. Like, the commentators at first thought that Lane Hutson had scored that goal because it just looked so direct from when he released that puck, but it was just a perfect shot pass onto the tape for Cole Caulfield, who had to do literally nothing to score that goal.
Put a stick on the ice. Yeah, and that's
put a stick on the ice.
That's what's great about playing with Lane Hutson. He like, when you talk about a prospect who makes like his teammates' jobs easy, I think that's exactly what Lane Hutson is doing so effectively now. And I think that was a drawn up play. Like, that looked prepared. But Lane Hutson plays inside of those structures so well. He plays inside of tactics, and he understands like the assignment that is asked of him. When Mike Matheson gets the puck at the top of the circle off the face-off win and starts attacking the middle, Lane Hutson knows exactly what to do. He starts sliding down the dot immediately. If he doesn't do that, if he's a second off in his read, Caulfield can't get a stick on that puck. So it's phenomenal to watch a kid understand the game so quickly, so effortlessly at such a young age. And yeah, he's overcoming his size in phenomenal ways. I continue to think that we won't start any beef on this podcast, but I think his compete level is not a problem at all. I don't think it's something that anyone needs to worry about at this current stage of Hutson, right?
It's literally the thing that, like, throughout training and rookie camp this season, whenever a journalist asked Rob Ramage, like, what is it about Lane Hutson that has impressed you the most? He never even mentioned the offense, the dynamism, or the skill. It was always the compete. He never gives up on a play. Whenever he loses the puck, he's right back there and is the first player checking the opposition once again. He just never gives up on plays. And similar thing as well, I think, with his handling ability that has been called average. I would argue otherwise. I think that he uses his handling in one of the more intelligent ways that we've seen from any rookie in the last decade, and how he leverages it. He's not the most flashy handler of any rookie we've seen in the last decade, but he's one of the more effective ones in the handling component. And it fits so well in with his speed and his playmaking ability, and those deceptive qualities and the little shoulder shimmy that not even NHL players have been able to solve. I mean, this has been a cheat code for him going back to his NTDP days, and it's still so effective because it involves reading and reacting rather than just guesswork and going in a direction randomly.
Yeah, And to close things off here, over under on 70 points for Lane Hutson on the season to match Mats Naslin's rookie scoring record for the Montreal Canadiens.
Over.
It's
going to be over. Yeah.
Listen, I'm already almost wrong with the over under that we had at the start of the season. I predicted 45 points for Lane Hutson. I'm already off on that, so I'll take your word for it. You're right the first time. Let's hope you're all right a second time here. He's at 13 points in his last 10. He's got 8 points in his last 4. And just like that, the Montreal Canadiens are 10-2-1 in their last 13 games. What is happening?
The Habs?
Yeah, no, ridiculous. But that's our episode done. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the episode. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, remember to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. And Locked On Fantasy Hockey's on now. We've got Steal and Flip giving you the best advice that fantasy hockey can offer as well. Check out their YouTube and Spotify podcasts as well. This has been Hadi Kalakash with Sebastian High. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you tune in next time.